still remember the day Frankie Dalton pulled me aside in his cramped office 10 years ago. The walls were covered with sketches of kitchen gadgets that would never see the light of day. "Mandy," he said, his eyes sparkling with that familiar excitement, "we're going to revolutionize how people cook." I was just 32 then, fresh from a failed startup, and desperate for a chance to prove myself. Frankie saw something in me that others missed. Together, we started Dalton Culinary Tech with nothing but borrowed money and wild dreams. Those early days were magic. We'd work until midnight, surviving on takeout and pure determination. Frankie wasn't just my boss, he became my mentor, my friend, and the father figure I never had. Every innovation, every late-night breakthrough, every small victory we shared together. When I look back now, those were the happiest years of my life. We were building something beautiful, something that mattered. Neither of us could have imagined what was coming. The bond we formed during those endless nights of coding and dreaming would become the foundation of everything that followed. Year 5 nearly killed us. I mean that literally. Our main investor pulled out after a competitor launched a similar product. Orders dried up overnight. Frankie mortgaged his house. I emptied my savings account. We had 3 weeks of payroll left, and our 20-employee team was looking at us with worried eyes. That's when desperation sparked innovation. I'd been tinkering with smart oven software in my spare time, code that could automatically adjust cooking temperatures and times based on food type and weight. "What if we pivot completely?" I suggested to Frankie one Tuesday morning. "Forget the hardware. Let's focus on the software." He raised an eyebrow. "You think people will pay for cooking software?" I pulled up my prototype on my laptop. The interface was clean, intuitive. "They'll pay because it'll make them better cooks," I said. We spent the next 72 hours without sleep refining the concept. By Friday, we had our pitch ready. By month's end, we had our first major client. The software that saved us was born from pure necessity and my refusal to give up. The smart oven software saved us and transformed everything. Within 2 years, we'd licensed it to every major appliance manufacturer in America. Revenue jumped from barely surviving to 8 figures annually. Frankie started calling me his secret weapon, though there was nothing secret about it. I led the development team, designed the user interface, and personally handled our biggest client relationships. By year 8, Dalton Culinary Tech was worth over $100 million. But something changed in Frankie around that time. He started getting tired easier, complained about stomach pain, lost weight. When the diagnosis came, liver cancer, it hit us both like a truck. "I need to start thinking about succession," he told me one gray October morning. My heart jumped. After everything we'd built together, surely he'd choose me to take over. "I'm bringing Cassidy in as interim CEO," he continued. I felt the air leave my lungs. Cassidy was his daughter, fresh from business school, with 0 experience in our industry. She'd visited the office maybe 5 times in 10 years. I watched my dreams of leading the company crumble in that single moment. Frankie's funeral was held on a rainy Thursday in his hometown, 3 hours from New York. He'd been specific in his will. He wanted to be buried next to his late wife Sarah in the small cemetery where they'd first bought a house together. The service was beautiful, but heartbreaking. I gave a eulogy about his vision, his kindness, his belief in impossible dreams. Cassidy sat in the front row, checking her phone throughout the ceremony. After the burial, Frankie's lawyer, Mr. Henderson, approached me. "Frankie left something for you," he said quietly, handing me a sealed envelope. The envelope was thick, official-looking. "When should I open it?" I asked. Henderson's expression was unreadable. "Not yet. You'll know when the time is right." I tucked the envelope into my purse, thinking it was probably a personal letter, maybe some final words of encouragement or advice. I had no idea it would change everything. That night, I stayed in a small bed and breakfast near the cemetery, unable to sleep, staring at the envelope and wondering what Frankie's final message to me could be. The weight of it felt significant somehow. I took 2 weeks of annual leave after the funeral. 10 years of working nonstop had left me emotionally drained, and losing Frankie felt like losing a piece of myself. I stayed at a quiet cabin upstate, trying to process my grief and figure out what came next under Cassidy's leadership. That's where I was when my phone lit up with notifications on a Tuesday morning. The first was a text from my assistant. "Check the business journal now." My hands shook as I opened the link. The headline made my blood freeze. "Dalton Culinary Tech goes on market for $250 million. Quick sale expected." I read the article 3 times, unable to believe what I was seeing. Cassidy had put our company, Frankie's life's work, my 10 years of blood and sweat, up for sale. The asking price was $50 million below our actual valuation. She was practically giving it away. I immediately tried calling the office, but Cassidy's assistant said she was in meetings all day. That's when I knew something was terribly wrong. This wasn't just business. This felt like betrayal. How could she destroy everything we'd built so carelessly? I threw everything into my suitcase and raced to the airport. I had to stop this sale, had to make Cassidy understand what she was destroying. But when I got to the terminal, the departure board showed a devastating word: canceled. A massive storm system had moved in, grounding all flights for safety. The gate agent was apologetic but firm. "Sorry, ma'am, nothing's flying until this weather clears." I spent the next 6 days in airport hotels, watching the weather reports obsessively. Every day brought news that the storm was getting worse, not better. Meanwhile, I could only watch helplessly as business publications covered the lightning-fast sale of Dalton Culinary Tech. Industry experts were puzzled by the low asking price. Some speculated about financial troubles. Others wondered if Cassidy knew something they didn't. I tried reaching the company's board members, but Cassidy had already gotten their approval. "It's a done deal," one board member told me over the phone. "The new owners take possession next Monday." My heart sank. Everything Frankie and I had built was slipping away, and I was powerless to stop it from hundreds of miles away. The weather finally cleared on Sunday. I caught the first flight back to New York, but I already knew I was too late. The sale had closed Friday afternoon. Cassidy had walked away with $250 million. As my taxi pulled up to our office building Monday morning, I saw workers already changing the company sign. Dalton Culinary Tech was being replaced with Innovative Kitchen Solutions. I stood on the sidewalk, watching our name disappear letter by letter. 10 years of my life erased. I thought about all the late nights Frankie and I had spent in that building, all the breakthroughs, all the dreams we'd shared. A security guard I'd known for 5 years gave me a sympathetic look. "Sorry, Miss Lewis," he said quietly. "Heard you were out of town when it happened." I nodded, unable to speak. I walked to a coffee shop across the street and sat by the window, staring at what used to be my second home. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from former colleagues, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Everything felt surreal, like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. The company that had been my entire world for a decade was gone. I was walking back to my apartment, feeling completely defeated, when my phone rang. The caller ID showed Henderson's law firm. "Miss Lewis? This is Gerald Henderson, Frankie's attorney. Could you come to my office immediately? There's something urgent we need to discuss." I almost said no. What was the point? The damage was done. But something in Henderson's voice made me change my mind. His office was in Midtown, 20 minutes by subway. Henderson was waiting for me with a thick file folder and a serious expression. "Please, sit down," he said. "There's something about Frankie's will that we need to address now that the sale has gone through." I frowned. "What does Frankie's will have to do with the company sale?" Henderson opened the folder and pulled out a document I'd never seen before. Frankie amended his will 6 months before he died. He added what's called a contingent beneficiary clause, specifically related to the sale of Dalton Culinary Tech. My heart started beating faster. What kind of clause? Henderson's next words changed my life forever. I gripped the arms of my chair, preparing for another shock. "If Dalton Culinary Tech is ever sold during Cassidy's ownership," Henderson read from the legal document, "85% of the sale proceeds will be transferred to Mandy Lewis, 10% to Cassidy Dalton, and 5% to the American Cancer Society." I stared at him in complete shock. "You're saying—" I couldn't finish the sentence. Henderson nodded gravely. Frankie never fully trusted Cassidy's judgment about the business. He suspected she might sell it quickly for a profit, so he protected what he considered your rightful share. My mind was spinning. 85% of $250 million was over $200 million. But the sale already closed, I said. Cassidy already has the money. Henderson shook his head. The funds are still in escrow pending final legal clearances. Cassidy won't receive anything until we execute Frankie's will provisions. She has no idea about this clause. I felt like I was in a dream. Why didn't Frankie tell me? Henderson smiled sadly. He said if he ever had to use this clause, you'd know he was looking out for you from beyond. The room seemed to spin around me as the magnitude of this revelation sank in. Henderson explained that Cassidy had tried to claim the full sale amount that morning, but the escrow company had frozen the transfer pending legal review. She's been calling our office every hour, Henderson said. She's quite upset. That was putting it mildly. As if on cue, Henderson's assistant knocked on the door. Sir, Miss Dalton is here. She says she won't leave until she speaks with you. Henderson sighed. Send her in. Cassidy burst through the door, her face red with anger. She stopped short when she saw me. What is she doing here? She demanded. This is about my inheritance. Henderson calmly explained the will provision. I watched Cassidy's expression change from anger to confusion to absolute fury. That's impossible, she screamed. Dad left me the company. I own it. Henderson handed her a copy of the amended will. Your father left you ownership of the company, yes. But he also included specific instructions about sale proceeds. Cassidy read the document, her hands shaking violently. 10%? 10%? That's only $25 million. She turned to me with pure hatred in her eyes. You manipulated him. You poisoned him against me. Her voice cracked with rage and disbelief. The next few days were chaos. Cassidy hired 3 different law firms, demanding they find a way to break Frankie's will. She claimed he wasn't mentally competent when he made the changes, that I had somehow coerced him, that the will was fraudulent. But Henderson had been thorough. He produced medical records showing Frankie was completely lucid when he amended the will. He had security footage from the law office, witnesses who testified about Frankie's clear intentions, and even a video recording Frankie had made explaining his decision. In the video, Frankie looked directly into the camera and said, Mandy built this company with me. She deserves to benefit from its success. If Cassidy is watching this, it means she chose money over legacy. I hope someday she understands the difference between earning something and inheriting it. Watching that video broke my heart. Even facing death, Frankie was protecting me and trying to teach his daughter a final lesson. The judge who reviewed the case took less than an hour to rule. Frankie's will was valid, his intentions were clear, and the clause would be enforced exactly as written. Cassidy stormed out of the courtroom, but not before hissing at me. This isn't over. But it was over, legally speaking. Cassidy's team of expensive lawyers filed appeal after appeal, but every court upheld Henderson's original ruling. The legal fees were eating into her 10%, but she couldn't stop fighting. Meanwhile, she launched a public relations war against me. She gave interviews to business magazines claiming I had manipulated her dying father. She told reporters I was a gold digger who had stolen her inheritance through emotional manipulation and lies. She even hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on my past, hoping to find something that would discredit me or prove I was unworthy of Frankie's trust. For weeks, my phone rang constantly with journalists wanting statements. I said nothing. Henderson advised me to stay quiet and let the facts speak for themselves. The private investigator found nothing because there was nothing to find. I'd worked honestly for 10 years, never taken anything that wasn't mine, never played office politics or tried to undermine Cassidy's relationship with her father. My HR file was spotless. My performance reviews were outstanding. Board meeting minutes showed Frankie praising my contributions year after year. Slowly, the tide of public opinion began to turn in my favor. The breakthrough came when TechCrunch published a detailed investigation into Dalton Culinary Tech's history. The reporter had interviewed former employees, reviewed financial records, and traced the company's growth from near bankruptcy to success. The headline read, "The Real Story Behind Dalton Tech, How Mandy Lewis Built a $100 million Company." The article detailed my role in saving the company during year 5, my leadership of the development team, and my personal relationships with major clients. It quoted the software engineers who worked under me, the sales team who credited me with winning key accounts, and board members who admitted I was the operational heart of the company. Most damaging to Cassidy's narrative, the article revealed that she had visited the office only 5 times in 10 years and had never shown interest in the family business until she inherited it. The piece included quotes from employees who described her as completely disconnected from daily house operations and more interested in the social aspects of being a CEO than the actual work. The article went viral within hours. Within days, I was getting supportive messages from hundreds of people in the tech industry. Former colleagues posted on LinkedIn, defending my character and sharing their own stories of my leadership and innovation. Cassidy's smear campaign backfired spectacularly. The more she attacked me publicly, the more people researched the truth and found her claims baseless. Business blogs started calling her the heiress who knew nothing, and me the builder who got her due. Her reputation in business circles was destroyed. Meanwhile, she was burning through money at an alarming rate. The legal fees for her failed appeals had cost over $3 million. She'd bought a penthouse apartment in Manhattan, a vacation home in the Hamptons, and a collection of luxury cars. She threw expensive parties almost every weekend, took lavish vacations to exotic locations, and hired an entourage of personal shoppers, stylists, and social media managers who disappeared the moment her spending attracted negative attention. Industry insiders began whispering that she was living far beyond her means. Financial advisors publicly questioned her money management in trade publications. By month 6, rumors were circulating that she was looking for investors for various business ventures, all of which seemed designed to capitalize on her temporary fame rather than create lasting value. I watched this downward spiral with a mixture of sadness and disbelief. Frankie would have been heartbroken to see his daughter proving every one of his fears correct. By the end of her first year with $25 million, Cassidy was essentially broke. The penthouse was in foreclosure proceedings. The vacation home was being repossessed by the bank. She'd defaulted on loans for the luxury cars, which were towed away one by one. Her business ventures had all failed spectacularly, including a high-end restaurant that closed after 3 months due to poor management, and a lifestyle brand that never sold a single product despite massive initial investment. The hangers-on who had flattered her during her wealthy phase were long gone, having moved on to other rich targets. She was forced to move back into her childhood bedroom in Frankie's old house, which she'd somehow managed not to sell during her spending spree. I heard about her situation through mutual acquaintances in the business world. Part of me felt vindicated. She'd wasted her inheritance exactly as Frankie had feared she would, proving his wisdom in protecting most of the money from her poor judgment. But a larger part of me just felt sad. This wasn't the revenge I'd wanted. Frankie had loved his daughter despite her flaws. He'd hoped she would grow into the business, learn responsibility, maybe even work alongside me someday. Instead, she'd proven every one of his worst fears correct while destroying her own future in the process. With my portion of the sale, over $212 million, I did what Frankie would have wanted. I started a new company, Dalton Legacy Labs. This wasn't about replacing our old company or competing with its new owners. This was about honoring Frankie's vision and pushing kitchen technology even further forward than we'd ever imagined possible. I assembled a team of the best engineers I could find, many of them former Dalton Culinary Tech employees who had been laid off after the acquisition. We focused on next-generation cooking technology, touchless smart stoves that responded to voice commands and gesture controls, AI-powered meal planning systems that could adapt to dietary restrictions and personal preferences, and revolutionary food preservation systems that could extend freshness for weeks without refrigeration. The media was fascinated by my comeback story. From fired to fortune, how Mandy Lewis turned betrayal into billions, read one magazine cover. But I wasn't doing this for publicity or personal vindication. I was doing it for Frankie, for our shared dream of making cooking accessible and enjoyable for everyone, regardless of their skill level or available time. Every product we developed carried his innovative spirit forward into the future. The most important decision I made was establishing the Frankie Dalton Foundation for Liver Cancer Research. I committed 40% of all Dalton Legacy Labs profits to the foundation, ensuring it would have steady funding for decades to come. Our first grant went to a research team at Johns Hopkins, developing new early detection methods that could catch liver cancer months sooner than current techniques. Our second funded a clinical trial for a promising new treatment that showed potential for significantly extending patient survival rates. I also established a scholarship program for children who had lost parents to cancer, helping them pursue education in science and technology fields where they could continue the fight against the disease that had taken their loved ones. The foundation's work gave me purpose beyond business success. Every innovation we created, every dollar we earned, was funding research that might save lives and spare other families the pain I'd watched Frankie endure. I thought about him every day, wondering what he would think of how I was using the money he'd left me. I hoped he'd be proud that his legacy was growing beyond anything we'd built together. The foundation's advisory board included some of the top cancer researchers in the country, and they assured me our funding was making a real difference in advancing treatment options. Dalton Legacy Labs grew faster than I'd ever imagined possible. Our first product, the AI Meal Planner, pre-sold 50,000 units before we even finished development. Major appliance manufacturers were in bidding wars to license our touchless stove interface technology. Within 18 months, we were valued at over $500 million. Tech publications called us the most innovative kitchen technology company in the world. I was invited to speak at major conferences, featured on magazine covers, and honored with industry awards for both innovation and philanthropy. But the success felt different this time. I wasn't building just for myself, or even just for profit. I was building a legacy that honored my mentor while funding research that could save lives. Every employee at Dalton Legacy Labs knew about our commitment to cancer research. They weren't just developing products, they were contributing to a cause larger than themselves. The company culture Frankie and I had always dreamed of was finally becoming reality, and it felt amazing. We had monthly all-hands meetings where foundation representatives would update us on research progress, reminding everyone that their work had meaning beyond profit margins. The sense of purpose was infectious, attracting top talent who wanted to be part of something meaningful. Around this time, I started hearing disturbing reports about Cassidy's situation. She'd been evicted from Frankie's house after failing to pay property taxes that had accumulated during her spending spree. She was living in a studio apartment in Queens, working multiple part-time jobs to make rent. Her former friends in high society had completely abandoned her once her money ran out. She'd tried launching several desperate comeback ventures. A YouTube channel about luxury living that attracted more mockery than viewers. A blog about entrepreneurship that was widely criticized as tone-deaf given her own failures, and a series of paid appearances at low-level business conferences where she told cautionary tales about financial responsibility. None of it worked. She'd burned too many bridges and squandered too much goodwill during her brief period of wealth. A friend in the industry mentioned that Cassidy's penthouse was being auctioned off to pay her remaining debts. He asked if I wanted to bid on it as an investment property, noting that the price would probably be well below market value. I declined immediately. Profiting from her mistakes felt wrong, like kicking someone who was already down. Despite everything she'd done to me, despite all the lies and attacks, I couldn't bring myself to profit from her suffering. That wouldn't honor Frankie's memory or the values he'd tried to instill in both of us. That's when I finally opened the envelope Frankie had given me at his funeral. Inside was a handwritten letter in his familiar scrawl, the same handwriting I'd seen on countless sticky notes and project outlines over the years. "Dear Mandy," it began. "If you're reading this, it means Cassidy made the choice I feared she would. She chose money over legacy, quick profit over long-term value. I'm sorry you had to experience her betrayal, but I hope my provisions in the will have shown you how much I valued your partnership and friendship. There's one more thing I need to ask of you, and it's the hardest request I've ever made. Cassidy is my daughter. and despite her flaws, I love her. She's lost and confused, driven by insecurities I couldn't help her overcome as her father. If the opportunity ever arises, please consider giving her a chance to redeem herself. Help her become the person I couldn't raise her to be. She has potential. She just needs someone to show her how to use it properly. You were the daughter I never had, Mandy. Please consider being the sister Cassidy never deserved, but desperately needs. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Even in death, Frankie was asking me to be the bigger person, to look past the hurt and see the potential for redemption. I wrestled with Frankie's request for weeks. Cassidy had spent months trying to destroy my reputation, claiming I was a manipulator and a thief who had stolen her rightful inheritance. She'd hired expensive lawyers to challenge money that was rightfully mine, according to her father's clearly stated wishes. She'd attacked me in the press, called me names in public, and tried to ruin my career and reputation. Every logical part of my brain said to ignore her and focus on my own success. I'd built an amazing company, established a meaningful foundation, and created a life I was proud of. Why should I risk any of that to help someone who had shown me nothing but hatred and contempt? But Frankie's words kept echoing in my mind. Please consider being the sister Cassidy never deserved, but desperately needs. I thought about all the lessons Frankie had taught me over the years, about forgiveness, about seeing potential in people even when they couldn't see it themselves. Finally, after weeks of internal debate, I made the call. My hands shook as I dialed her number. Cassidy, this is Mandy Lewis. I'd like to buy you lunch. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. Finally, she spoke. What do you want? Her voice was different, smaller, less confident than I remembered, stripped of the arrogance that had once defined her. I want to talk, I said simply. About your father, about the future, about possibilities. Another long pause. I could hear her breathing, processing this unexpected call. I can't afford expensive restaurants anymore, she said quietly, and I heard the shame in her voice. I know a diner in Queens. It's nothing fancy, but the food is decent and it's cheap. Perfect, I said. I'll see you there Saturday at noon. The diner was a small, worn place with cracked vinyl booths and fluorescent lighting that had seen better days. Cassidy was already there when I arrived, looking thin and tired in clothes that had clearly seen better days. She didn't make eye contact when I sat down, just stared into her coffee cup like it held answers to questions she couldn't voice. So what is this? She asked, stirring her coffee nervously. Some kind of victory lap? You want to gloat about how far I've fallen? I shook my head. I want to offer you a job. She laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and disbelieving. Right? What's the catch? You want me to be your personal assistant so you can humiliate me every day? Make me fetch your coffee and remind me how I used to be rich? Entry-level position at Dalton Legacy Labs, I said calmly. Same starting salary and benefits as any other new hire. No special treatment, but no extra punishment either. You'll work your way up based on merit, just like everyone else. Cassidy stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Why would you do this? After everything I've done to you, I tried to destroy your reputation. I called you a liar and a thief in front of reporters. I spent months trying to prove you manipulated my father. I thought about Frankie's letter, about his faith in redemption and second chances. Because your father asked me to. And because I think you could be better than you've been. She was quiet for a long time, processing this unexpected offer. Finally, what would I be doing? Whatever needs doing. Filing, data entry, basic research. You'll start at the bottom and earn your way up. Her first day at Dalton Legacy Labs was awkward for everyone. Word had spread about who she was, and most employees viewed her with suspicion or outright hostility. She was assigned to our research documentation team, spending her days organizing technical specifications and updating database entries. It was mind-numbing work, far below what she considered her proper station. She complained constantly during her first weeks, asking why she couldn't have a leadership role since she had business school training. I reminded her that experience mattered more than credentials, that her father and I had built our original company from the ground up through hard work, not connections. She failed her first performance review miserably. She was frequently late, made careless errors, and had a condescending attitude toward her supervisor. I was tempted to fire her, but I remembered Frankie's faith in people's ability to change. Instead, I moved her to a different team and gave her one more chance. Slowly, very slowly, something began to change. She started arriving on time. Her error rate decreased. She even began asking thoughtful questions about our technology and showing genuine interest in our mission. The breakthrough came during our annual product development cycle. Cassidy, now 6 months into her entry-level position, was assigned to review customer feedback surveys about our meal planning software. Most people would have just compiled the data and moved on, but Cassidy noticed something others had missed: a pattern in complaints about the portion size calculations. She spent her own time researching the issue and discovered that our algorithm wasn't properly accounting for different metabolic rates in older adults. She presented her findings to the development team with a proposed solution that would save us months of work and significantly improve customer satisfaction. It was solid, well-researched work that demonstrated real understanding of both our technology and our customers' needs. For the first time since starting at the company, Cassidy had contributed something genuinely valuable. I promoted her to junior analyst and assigned her to work directly with our customer experience team. She was still far from leadership, but she was finally earning her place through merit rather than expecting it through inheritance. 2 years later, I stood on stage at the National Innovation Awards Gala, accepting recognition for Dalton Legacy Labs' contributions to both technology and philanthropy. Our foundation had funded breakthrough research that led to new treatment protocols being adopted in hospitals nationwide. Beside me stood Cassidy, now our Director of Customer Advocacy, leading the team that had helped us achieve the highest customer satisfaction ratings in our industry. She'd also become the face of our Cancer Research Foundation, organizing fundraising events and speaking publicly about her father's legacy with a passion and authenticity I'd never seen from her before. The woman who had once tried to destroy me was now one of my most trusted employees, and surprisingly, something like a friend. When the presenter asked us to say a few words, I gestured for Cassidy to speak first. She stepped to the microphone, poised and confident in a way that reminded me of Frankie at his best. 2 years ago, I was a spoiled, bitter person who had squandered every opportunity I'd been given, she said, her voice steady and clear. Mandy Lewis had every reason to hate me, every justification to let me fail. Instead, she honored my father's faith in redemption and gave me the chance to become someone worthy of the Dalton name. She turned to me with tears in her eyes. I was born into this industry, but Mandy made me worthy of it. The applause was thunderous. Looking up at the ceiling, I whispered, "We did it, Frankie. We kept your legacy alive and helped your daughter find her way home."